It was supposed to be a quiet morning drive, but for General Maya Richardson, one of the highest-ranking women in the U.S. Army, it became the day that would shake an entire department. Her uniform was in her back seat, her ID in her purse, and her confidence, unshakable. But when flashing red and blue lights appeared behind her, she slowed, expecting a routine check. What she got instead was far from routine. The officers approached with suspicion in their eyes, ignoring her calm voice and credentials. "Step out of the vehicle," they ordered coldly. She complied, trying to keep her dignity intact. But when they reached for the cuffs, something inside her snapped, not in anger, but in disbelief. Years of service, countless sacrifices, and still, this. The silence was heavy, but the storm was only beginning. As the metal cuffs clicked around her wrists, Maya kept her composure. She looked them in the eye, not with hate, but with unshaken discipline. One officer scoffed when she mentioned she was a general, calling it a nice story. The other chuckled, searching her car for reasons to justify what they had done. The situation drew attention. Onlookers recorded the scene, some whispering her name, realizing who she was. Maya didn't plead, didn't yell. She simply said, "You're making a mistake." Those 5 words carried the weight of power they didn't yet understand. Because somewhere inside her purse was a phone that held a direct line to the Pentagon, and a truth that would soon come crashing down on them. Inside the precinct, the officers smirked, assuming they had caught someone important pretending to be someone greater. Maya sat quietly, letting them talk. When they finally allowed her a phone call, she didn't call a lawyer. She called her office at the Pentagon. Within minutes, confusion rippled through the room as multiple calls began coming in, from Washington. Supervisors rushed in, whispering in panic, realizing who sat handcuffed in their station. Maya remained calm. "I told you," she said softly. The officers' faces drained of color. The room felt colder. They didn't know it yet, but their careers had just taken a turn they could never undo. An unmarked black SUV arrived within the hour. 2 officials stepped out, their badges shining with authority far above local ranks. They walked past everyone straight to Maya. "Ma'am, we're deeply sorry for this mistake," one said, uncuffing her instantly. The room was silent except for the echo of their words. The officers who had mocked her stood frozen, realizing the gravity of their arrogance. Maya looked at them, calm, professional, yet deeply disappointed. "You didn't see a person," she said, "you saw a stereotype." Her voice wasn't loud, but every word hit harder than a shout. The message was clear: respect isn't about color, it's about humanity. The story spread like wildfire. News outlets picked it up, social media erupted, and millions demanded accountability. Maya didn't speak publicly, not yet. She knew her silence spoke louder than outrage. Behind closed doors, she met with senior officials, emphasizing one thing: this wasn't about revenge, it was about reform. Meanwhile, the 2 officers faced an internal review, and for the first time, they had to confront the truth: how easily prejudice had blinded them. Maya's grace under pressure turned her into a symbol of dignity, a reminder that power isn't shown through anger, but through restraint. Weeks later, the police department released an official apology. The chief personally visited Maya's office, visibly humbled. She accepted it, but not for herself, for every person who never got the chance to demand one. Her colleagues at the Pentagon stood behind her, proud yet pained. "You turned an insult into an example," one said. Maya nodded. Change doesn't come from fear, it comes from exposure. Her story began appearing in leadership seminars, diversity programs, and training manuals across the country. She didn't just forgive, she educated. Months passed. Maya returned to her duties, focused as ever. But her name had become more than a title, it was a lesson. The 2 officers had lost their badges, but they had also gained a lifetime to reflect. One even wrote her a letter, thanking her for teaching him humanity in the hardest way. Maya read it quietly, then looked out her office window at the flag waving high. She smiled faintly. Justice hadn't come from rage, it came from truth. And sometimes, the most powerful weapon isn't rank or authority, it's grace under fire. A year had passed since that unforgettable day, but its echoes still shaped the lives of many. General Maya Richardson stood on the stage of a national leadership summit, the lights bright, the crowd silent in anticipation. Behind her flashed images of that morning, her arrest, the headlines, and finally, her standing tall in uniform, unbroken. She began speaking, not about injustice or anger, but about growth. "We can't rewrite what happened," she said, her voice calm and steady, "but we can rewrite what comes next." The audience leaned in, captivated by her poise. A year had passed since that unforgettable day, but its echoes still shaped the lives of many. General Maya Richardson stood on the stage of a national leadership summit, the lights bright, the crowd silent in anticipation. Behind her flashed images of that morning, her arrest, the headlines, and finally, her standing tall in uniform, unbroken. She began speaking, not about injustice or anger, but about growth. "We can't rewrite what happened," she said, her voice calm and steady, "but we can rewrite what comes next." The audience leaned in, captivated by her poise. Years later, the story of General Maya Richardson became more than a memory, it became a movement. Across the nation, her name was mentioned in classrooms, academies, and leadership forums as a symbol of quiet strength and moral courage. The viral video that once showed her humiliation now stood as a teaching tool, proof that dignity can't be handcuffed. Maya never sought fame, but destiny made her a voice for those who couldn't speak. One quiet evening, she visited the same road where it all began. The wind was calm, the streetlights flickered softly, and for a moment, she stood still, reflecting on how far she'd come. In the distance, she saw a patrol car stop beside a driver, and this time, the officer greeted them with respect. Maya smiled faintly. Change was slow, but it was real. She opened her journal and wrote a single line: "Sometimes, injustice plants the seed of transformation." Then she closed it, not with bitterness, but with peace. Her phone buzzed, a message from the Pentagon confirming that her training initiative had been adopted nationwide. The cycle had turned. What once broke her now built a legacy of fairness and awareness. As the night sky stretched above her, Maya looked up, whispering a quiet thank you, to life, to lessons, to resilience. The world hadn't always been kind, but she had turned pain into purpose. And that, she thought, was her greatest victory. When she drove away that night, the road behind her wasn't a memory of humiliation anymore, it was a reminder of redemption. Because true strength isn't shown in the battles you fight, it's in the grace you choose when you've already won. 10 years had passed since that fateful morning, a single moment that had rewritten the path of countless lives. General Maya Richardson had retired from active duty, but her mission never ended. She had become an advocate for equality and ethical leadership, mentoring young officers and guiding policy reform nationwide. Everywhere she went, people stood taller, inspired not by her medals but by her message. One evening, she was invited to the White House to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. As she stepped onto the stage, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Cameras flashed, yet she seemed untouched by fame, still humble, still steady. When handed the medal, she paused, glancing at it before looking at the crowd. "This," she said, holding it up gently, "doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to everyone who's ever been doubted, dismissed, or disrespected, and still chose grace instead of anger." Her words silenced the room. Even the president's eyes softened with respect. After the ceremony, she walked outside beneath the calm night sky. The same stars she once looked at from her military base now shimmered with new meaning. Her journey had come full circle, from a roadside injustice to a national legacy. And as the wind brushed against her face, she whispered a quiet vow: "May every person who wears a uniform remember, power means nothing without compassion." The nation remembered her story not for the scandal that started it, but for the strength that defined it. In classrooms, young cadets studied her speech. In police academies, her case became a blueprint for change. She had become what few ever achieve, a living example that grace can conquer prejudice. As the camera faded to black, her voice echoed softly: "History doesn't remember the anger, it remembers the courage to rise above it."